Our tech seems to be working, and we are all assembled and ready to go. Thank you so much for being here. We're going to jump right in.
Hello, welcome. Welcome to the New Hampshire UDL Innovation Network's webinar. My name is Melissa Sanjay, and I'm here with Ari, who is our Innovation Network Manager at CAST. And we have some other guests with us. You'll see their photos coming up on the slide. We have Mary Lane from the New Hampshire Department of Education. Mary, would you like to welcome folks to the webinar?
Absolutely. Welcome, everyone. This is very exciting. So we call this the final phase of the New Hampshire UDL Innovation Network application process, where we're scaling up and implementing across the state, really educating families and teachers and everybody to become expert learners around the Universal Design for Learning framework. More importantly, I'd really like to hear from the folks that are actually in the network how beneficial it's been to them and how exciting it is as we move forward to really make sure that personalized learning in New Hampshire truly engages students and helps them to represent their knowledge in multiple ways. So take it away.
Great, thank you, Mary. And you led right into it. We have with us Anne and Marianne from the DJ Bakie School in New Hampshire. They have been implementing UDL for a number of years at their school. And Anne and Marianne, could you introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about your context in your school?
I'll let you start. Sure. I'm Annie Rutherford, and we've had the good fortune of being part of the UDL network since our application in 2014. And we've been able to make remarkable changes and impact in the school. We're an elementary school, pre-K to 5, and our focus has been working from a framework of professional learning communities and really looking at how to really personalize the learning of each of our youngsters. So UDL has fit beautifully in our long-term goal with that. And Marianne?
And I think what you see across the board in our school, in each of those PLCs where you see that we have a UDL member, you see that our conversations are becoming richer, more engaged as we're creating those common assessments, and people are really looking at things with a new lens, with that UDL lens, and thinking, how can we go deeper and how can we look at things with that UDL lens and create a learning environment that really is student-centered and goal-oriented. It's very exciting.
Great, thank you so much. And we'll be hearing a lot more from Anne and Marianne as we go along. But in UDL, we always start with a goal. So we're going to tell you what the goals of this webinar are. First, we're going to define and examine why would we want to use Universal Design for Learning. Then we're going to clarify the goals and structures of our NHUDL Innovation Network. And we're going to understand the broader impact of UDL on school communities. And lastly, we're going to answer any questions that you have about this network or this process. Before we get to those goals, though, Ari's going to give us a little overview on how this webinar is going to work.
So if you missed the bit.ly on the first slide, go ahead and jot it down now. This will give you a link to the Google Slides, which there are a couple of links that link right out from there, so you don't have to frantically be writing down websites. So it's bit.ly/NHUDLinfo. And then you can follow along, take notes right on the slide. It's a really great representation. So feel free to follow along at home using that. Additionally, there's a chat box where you can send us messages. So, and as questions come up, feel free to catch them there. Just make sure that you're sending it to all panelists and attendees so that we can all be part of that conversation. And that's a really great way to capture your thoughts as they're happening. And to ask questions at the end, which we are leaving plenty of time for. So feel free to pass me notes, the whole webinar, and or look for that chat box to do that at the end.
Great. All right, so the work we'll be doing in the New Hampshire UDL Innovation Network is the implementation of UDL. So that begs the question, what is UDL? We could spend the entire time talking about what is UDL, and we're actually when you're in the New Hampshire Innovation Network, you will be spending the entirety of our time together working with CAST on digging deeper into what is UDL, what does it look like in classrooms, how do I do it. But I'm going to try to give a quick overview. It's hard to give a quick overview of UDL because it's more of a lens and a framework through which to look at some of our teaching and learning. But I'm going to try. So UDL is an instructional design framework, and it's aimed at empowering all learners to become expert learners. And this framework is based on variability, and what we mean by that when we say variability, we mean that there's no average student, there's no average learner, there's no average brain. So we have to construct our design, our instructions such that we can, all these variable students can have access to the curriculum. And so what we do, how we do that is we use a tool that we call the guidelines that is based on neuroscience. And we use that tool to proactively anticipate what barriers might be in the curriculum. And then we use it also to design things that would help all learners have access to the curriculum. And the reason we do all of this is aimed at growing expert learners in our classroom and growing our students as expert learners. And we define at CAST expert learners as learners who are purposeful and motivated, resourceful and knowledgeable, and strategic and goal-directed. So that's the soundbite version of what is UDL. But as I said, as we get to know each other and become a network and include more people in our network, we'll be digging deeper into all of those things. So with that said, I'd like to hear from Annie and Marianne about their context and their learners, and how has UDL helped your students become expert learners, or how has the learner experience changed in your school at DJ Bakie?
Well, that's a great question. I think that UDL has been the framework that we've been able to use to truly have students from early on, kindergarten through 5th grade, become more focused on how they learn best. They've been able to really become expert learners by being their own best advocates. And it's been through, initially when we were starting the work, we thought, okay, what do our students need? And we really were, over time, focused down to how do we have the engagement increase by having the students truly get to know how they learn best.
I think you see now that students can articulate clearly what their learning goals are. They can articulate what their strengths are and what their needs are. And part of that comes from that conversation and that common language that we have about what does it mean to be an expert learner, and also that metacognition piece that happens in the classroom about reflecting on your own learning and what helped you get there and what's going to help you proceed further as you continue to be a learner, because the learning doesn't stop and we're always continuing on that path. And I think a shift that happens along that way is that the classrooms are being designed differently. That you see that our classrooms are now perhaps more goal-oriented than they were before, even in the way that the spaces are designed at the onset, and more thoughtful before the students even come in. You see that there's a little shift in how we look at the spaces and the curriculum before, in that planning process as we look forward to the students engaging in the curriculum. So I think that's a big difference. Whereas before we may have shifted when there was a problem, when the students were coming against obstacles, when there was a barrier, then we differentiated. Now we're preparing for that beforehand. That's the shift.
Yeah, that's great. So you're anticipating your barriers, you're designing for all students, you're putting the options in the environment. Those are all great shifts that have happened.
Excellent. Thank you. So we're going to tackle our second goal, which is to clarify the goals and structures of the network. So how do we get there? How do we learn all about UDL? And just a reminder that the goal of the network itself is to empower learners and transform teaching and learning. The way we do that is really through thoughtful design, hands-on learning and implementation with a collaborative team. So hopefully as you've been kind of looking through the application materials, which if you need the link, it'll again be at the end of the webinar, you've been kind of seeing what we recommend in terms of team composition, but it really is digging in this professional learning community at your school and then being connected to the broader network. Currently we have about 45 schools in the network and we're growing every day. So being really part of that network is really exciting. Along with that, I know everyone wants to know what are they signing up for. So again, this is outlined in the application materials, but just another representation. We have the opportunity to meet with all of those different school teams all together 3 times a year. So there are 3 face-to-face days, one in the fall, one in the winter, and one in the spring. And if you're following along in the speaker notes, you'll see we already have those dates released. And you actually have an option in a very UDL way. You'll get to choose one of 2 dates in September, one of 2 dates in January, and one of 2 dates in March. So no need to pull out your calendars and start scheduling that now, but you have those resources to look at. And additionally, and those are really wonderful conferences, which are really more, conference isn't the right word because we're not there to instruct or share information. It's really a collaboration opportunity with different breakout sessions based on your background knowledge and interests. So, and here's a live action shot of one of those network meetings. We also have learning design studios, which are optional. So it's not a commitment, but being part of the network allows you to come to these additional professional learning days where you bring your own work and just really dig into it through a UDL lens. And those are small groups, sort of flash mobs, professional learning communities with participants from lots of different schools, just putting their head together to reduce barriers for educators and learners. So additionally, we're asking that every UDL team meets at least 2 hours per month. That time is really important because UDL is hard to do in a vacuum, and so it's really building that professional learning community. This includes virtual workshops. So 1 hour of that month will be spent where we will actually provide information, and asynchronously you'll enjoy that and dig into that together. And in order to help support that, your team facilitator will also have an hour call with a CAST implementation specialist. If you're lucky, you'll get Melissa, who will help you think through how to structure those meetings and how to get the most out of your time together. Additionally, we're really excited that we offer 3 full days at your school with an implementation specialist running instructional rounds. So really looking at practice, not as an evaluation at all, but through the lens of looking for UDL and where UDL can help you reach your goals for teaching and learning in your school. So it's really 6 days throughout the year of professional learning for educators in addition to the 2 hours every month of learning. So 3 face-to-face days where you leave and join us, and 3 days where we come to you.
And if I may speak up, the Department of Education appreciates CAST being flexible. We promised districts and we promised the state board that we would begin to implement the principles of UDL throughout our professional opportunities and the flexibility. We understand that right now the system isn't perfect and that you need time to become the expert. And so we're trying to really dig at that and show different options to see what would work. Also really want to impact this coaching model so that throughout the state everyone can see what everyone else is doing and really benefit from that. So I really appreciate how much time and effort it's been spent on developing, trying to be flexible, but yet get the work done in a timely manner. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks, Mary. UDL is about clear goals and flexible means. So we've tried to design it so there's lots of different ways in, and that we're meeting our goal of spreading UDL. So we've talked about the learner experience, and I'd love to talk about the educator experience now, and hear from you Bakie folks about how participating in the network has helped advance your own practice. What's this been like for you?
Well, I think one of the most amazing experiences for me, particularly this year, was having Melissa as our facilitator, our implementation specialist, because she was able to help us articulate our goal and really help us define what it was that we wanted to zero in on. And when you have someone who can work with you as an outsider and help you direct your vision, you can go places. And so UDL was able to place a person who had that unique ability for us. So that was really helpful, I would say. And in addition to the amazing resources that we got, having a specialist was the best resource that we had so that we could move forward in our own goal.
I think too, and I would agree wholeheartedly with Marianne. I think one of the things that we learned early on was that there was available to us an amazing number of resources.
May now be dismissed.
Sorry about that.
Yeah,
we're in dismissal.
we got through most of them. We've had a wealth of resources, but it can be overwhelming, especially early on. We felt like there were so many resources. How do we muddle through to find the ones that are really going to target our work? And Melissa has been instrumental in helping us do that. And at the same time, I feel like the flexibility of the entire CAST team has really responded to everything that we're up against. So as we continue our journey, our goals shift, and they're right there ready with the tools that we need to make that shift. And that's been invaluable.
So we had a question about whether or not all of our teachers are participating in UDL. This year we have a team of eight. And over the last 4 years, our team has changed and flexed. So we have a core group of perhaps four that has remained the same. So, you know, we might have 3 or 4 new members each year. And our goal this year was to expand the UDL vision in our school. And I think we've done a really great job this year of doing that because of the excitement of the team and people being able to share that with, you know, their colleagues.
I think too, one of the things I mentioned to Marianne in my endless years in education, I've not seen something roll out as productively as UDL. It was not an initiative that was given a timeline. Everybody's going to be on board by this date or else. We started, and we would take 5 minutes of weekly staff meetings to just share a little UDL tidbit, something that changed somebody's instruction or their practice. And the teachers wanted in. They just wanted to hear more. They wanted to be involved. And over time, it has really emerged as being in the forefront of what everybody wants to be a part of now. And that's so rare.
Yeah, you know, our school has been recognized as being a model PLC school. So we kind of know the PLC model, but I have to tell you that this is the best PLC that I've ever been involved in. We have had the richest conversation about student learning. We have had the richest conversation about adult learning and how to move ourselves forward as educators. And that's when you really move kids, is when you're moving yourself as an educator. I think that the risk-taking of the adults and the degree of reflection that have been part of the practice has been just incredible. Yeah. And I would agree. Yeah.
Great. Amazing. And that's part of the power. As Melissa said, it's hard to describe UDL because it's not a curriculum or a checklist, but that's part of the power, is that it's so flexible and can really be applied to everything you're doing throughout the school that transitions us beautifully into thinking about the impact.
Right. And we did want to talk a little bit about the broader impact of UDL in some schools that we've been working with. We have been working with some schools that have seen some differences and some of their data, I do want to say we have not done a purely academic, double-blind, anything like that. It's not an official study, but during the time in which schools have implemented UDL, they've seen gains in other ways. So this particular graph you're looking at now is from a school, middle school in Revere. And during the time that they've been implementing UDL and making these shifts in the way that they're thinking about the design of their curriculum and they're thinking about their learners, they saw a 87% drop in their external suspensions. They saw a 65% drop in their detentions, a 57% drop in the amount of students that they retained in a grade, and an 89% drop in their special ed referrals. So we see these kinds of impacts happen across schools as they implement UDL. They start to see gains in other things. The next one we wanted to talk about is a school district in Indiana. And you can see here that they saw the test score averages rise for everyone. So when Ari and I were talking about this ahead of time, we talked about a rising tide raises all ships. So we see UDL making improvements for all students. And in addition, you can see in this graph that they've also closed the gap between the special ed population and the general ed population as everyone increases their scores. And that same district, the next graph is about their advanced placement test. So that same district not only saw a rise in students who were passing the AP test, but a rise in students who wanted to take the AP test. So they started to see a rise in students that were interested in those AP classes. And anecdotally, we also hear things like you heard from DJ Bakie. This is the best BLC I've ever been involved in. I can't tell which students have IEPs, which students don't. I never knew that student could do this, that, or the other thing. Many schools report that UDL has given them a common language for learning. And I recently heard at a school when I was giving a full school 101, one of the participants in the network said, this year has been the most fun I've ever had teaching. And the teacher I've been teaching for about 15 years. And she had the most fun that year because she had let the students decide their own direction, and to watch them grow in that way was the most fun that she had teaching. So those are some common things that we hear from learners, teachers, parents, and administrators when people start to implement UDL. And we wanted to ask DJ Bakie if they would tell us a little bit about the impact that the network has had on their school. You know, you don't have to come up with graphs or anything like that, but just a little sense of how school-wide does it feel like UDL has helped you to reach your school or district goals?
Well, I think one of my favorite UDL visuals is the map. And you've got a road map. And for so long, I think we as elementary school educators have always felt that we've got to follow the rules. And we've got to follow the steps to take the children to where they are going. But I think one of the things that UDL has allowed us to do is to visualize that map, look at where we're going, and let the children determine how they can best get there. And that has been really, really powerful, especially with those students who are as young as first grade. I'm not sure that any of us gave them the credit for being able to drive their own learning like they have demonstrated.
And I think UDL, again, has just allowed us that opportunity to just reflect. It sort of held up that mirror for us to say, let's reflect on our own processes and our own progress, and are we where we want to be, and what do we have to do to get where we want to be. And that's what expert learners do. And as teachers, we need to be expert learners as well. Reflect on your work.
And I think too, there were early on, I think we as a UDL team were trying to follow the rules and do everything we were supposed to do in terms of data collection. And we got ourselves bogged down with it. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't until we took a step back, and Cass has been fantastic about really giving us a increased structure and ability to navigate all of that through the years the last whole day that we went to in Concord, it's just amazing how personalized that whole experience has become, and how much of an impact that forum has had on our implementation.
Yeah.
Great.
Absolutely.
And if I could just comment from a state perspective, even within the Department of Education, we're looking at strategically across the department, what does it mean about a system? So we all are saying we're in silos, but the fact is there is a system, but it's not that the system drives us. We're changing that pyramid, and we're saying, no, we are driving the system. It sounds a little unique, but the fact is the system is built with some flexibility that we never thought we had, kind of like what you're saying, that we're learning how to work within the system to be flexible.
Yeah, I think one of our favorite stories is a first grade classroom doing a writing unit on animals and their habitats. And the teacher who was part of the UDL team had for years provided the sequence and the templates for the children to follow a step-by-step approach in putting these projects together. And one of her biggest ahas was letting a little bit go in terms of taking a risk and giving the students more choice, but the product was incredible. What the children came back with when she let more of the, putting the whole structure, ownership, yeah. Mm-hmm. When she left it up to the children, it was just amazing, the products that she got. Mm-hmm. And that was powerful to present to the staff, to say to the staff, yep, this is what I used to do before. This is post-UDL. Look at the difference. Yeah. It's those kind of anecdotal stories, I think, that have the biggest impact.
And that subtle shift from teaching to learning. We're really we're looking at design, and we're looking at the learner first. It's a language to help us to do that. Exactly. And the support of others in your school and outside of it to do that. Mm-hmm. Wonderful. Mm-hmm. Right. Great. So we left plenty of time for questions. I want to first answer the two most frequent. The first is my school too small or big or uniquely structured? I get, as the one who all of your emails are going to come to, I get a lot of questions about how will this actually work. I read exactly how many people need to be on the team. I read exactly how the instructional rounds days work. And as I said, UDL is about clear goals and flexible means. So we will work with all sizes of schools. After you submit your application, you're going to have an interview with an implementation specialist who's going to really help you think through who are the best people to get on your team and how could this work the best, even if you don't have a traditional structure. And if reading through the components seems like there might provide barriers, we are specially trained in identifying barriers and reducing them. That is what UDL is all about. So please do apply. Please do keep the conversations going and the questions coming, because we don't want the size of your school or the structure of your school to be a barrier. If you want to do this work, we want to help you do this work. And the other question we often get is, how much does this cost? And thanks to the generosity of the New Hampshire Department of Education, there is no cost to schools for this program. All of the on-site days are all on-site, off-site are all sponsored. I will say that some schools do want to make sure that they budget for coverage. For subs for those professional learning days, and some schools do choose to provide stipends for teachers for participation. It's really a school by school basis, but as for all of the components that I outlined, that's all included in the grant, and it's brought to you thanks to folks like Mary.
Well, thank you. But I appreciate that question about staffing and substitutes covering the classes. We do how you can. It is allowed under IDA funds be able to provide stipends to teachers after hours for working and also for substitutes. So that in mind, with new monies coming down.
Mm-hmm. Great. Excellent. So a frequent question that I have is, why should a school apply to this network? If you wouldn't mind speaking to that, Anne and Marion.
Oh, I can't think of any reason why you would not. Honestly, I don't, like I said, our goal has been for the past 10, 11 years to really get better and better at our PLCs and drive personalized learning. And UDL has accelerated our ability to do that. What's neat too is we have the newer members of our team who are new to the profession are coming in with experience from the undergraduate or graduate programs with UDL that I don't think, I hate to say older, but some of us veterans may not have had, which is really a step up too. The whole learning curve of getting to know what UDL is already done with some of our new folks coming on.
Mm. You just get so much support. Yeah, you definitely want to be part of the network to help you navigate. Oh, lots of people.
And Mary Lane, I really appreciate this question. And one of the things that the commissioner would say is use this opportunity to be supported and to become a rock star, but also to plan out your work on competency-based learning, on personalized learning, looking at driving that specialized design instruction. All of these things can be played with and implemented in an opportunity like this to really dream, design, and be flexible and change the instruction.
Wonderful. So questions are just one. Let's see, is that better? Yep. Okay, great. Questions are flooding in. I just want to show you 2 more slides first, and then we will address them all. The first is, how do I apply? So here's another bit.ly I will put in the chat that'll lead you right to the application. And as I mentioned, so we are doing rolling applications now until June 3rd, and it's rolling, so as soon as we get it, we'll get you on the phone with an implementation specialist. And on that conversation, we really want the school principal and anyone else who collaborated on the application. And then you'll receive notification within 2 weeks of that interview. So you really can be proactively planning your next.
And if I could add, we really are addressing schools, so charter, special education private providers, school districts, all can apply. I think that was not fully communicated at one of the application processes, but we quickly remedied that.
Great. Mary, I think would you mind muting? I think that's the echo. Go for it. Yeah. Tech will always throw us barriers, and we will always reduce them. So we are now able to visit all of these questions. Thank you so much for putting those. The first question I'm hoping to send to DJ Bakie is the idea of some more concrete examples. So you spoke about the first grade classroom, but what else does UDL look like in practice?
I think one of the things I can think of is we have a 5th grade teacher who was a member of the UDL team, and she had done a cell unit. And for years, the children had different kinds of candy, like long licorice, and each candy was identified as a component of that cell. And they were given a framework, and they were asked to do it. And again, she took a step back and said, what's my end goal? And then she had the children design how they were going to put together these cells. And the creativity, it was just phenomenal. And again, it was a concrete example of a before UDL and after UDL kind of shift. And I think that that's what we've been able to share anecdotally with adults as we talk about our work. It's, okay, now if I put a UDL lens on this, how can I spin it different? And it's really been powerful.
So the goal was that students could identify these 6 different parts of the cell. And before, students were being given 6 different materials and told, this will be the mitochondria, this will be, you know, and they would label each part of the cell. And then the door opened and they were just told, design a model of a cell. And they could use any materials they wanted. Some were 3D, some were 2D, some kids used PowerPoint. You know, they were incredibly designed and they were so much more creative, and they didn't want to stop. Some kids started comparing plant cells to animal cells. It just went further and deeper, and it became such a richer unit than it had been because they weren't limited. And the teacher realized what she had been doing before was stopping the learning. Yeah. So that's a quick example.
I think I think another example that may help, we had a 3rd grade teacher who was a member of our team who was working on writing and how the children were initiating their own writing and increasing their stamina with their writing. So what they did was they established personal goals for themselves. So what it looked like to the observer is I would walk in the room and she was giving the mini lesson, and one by one, as the ideas came to these individual learners, they would write their goal on a sticky, and they would get up and go to their desk, grab the tools they needed for their writing, and some were at a desk, some may have taken a clipboard over to the corner on the floor, whatever. They, in complete silence, because they were all just deep in reflection on how they were going to, first of all, establish their goal and then head off into their writing area. It was just so cool. And, you know, you're talking about 15 to 18 children who nobody was really paying attention to what anyone else was doing. They were all just engaged in their own goal setting and then in their learning. And then she would ring the chime after they were started for about 12 minutes just to check in. Am I focused? Am I targeting my goal? And it was just a little reminder throughout the duration. It was really, really powerful.
Mm-hmm. I mean, you're really describing expert learning. Really. So when you get to know UDL, you'll see these. I have a handy dandy mouse pad, but the UDL guidelines, we're talking about self-regulation, executive function, comprehension, really thinking about directing your own learning. And even folks who are really familiar with UDL, this is such a great question, Amy, are still struggle to say, what does it look like in practice? It looks different everywhere because it's an approach. It's a way of thinking about how you're making design decisions. A small story I'll add is just the difference of making a graphic organizer for the students with IEPs versus making a graphic organizer and offering it to everyone. So we say what's necessary for one is good for all. That's such a subtle change, but think about what it does to stigma, think about what it does to self-directed learning, to gradual release, to really letting students say, do I need that or do I not? Really think about that. Make my own decision.
Mary Lane here. I was just going to add that one other opportunity the Department of Education is providing is through what we call the UDL Scholar. So that's Greg Armand. If you go YouTube, Greg Armand, he's been really putting up videos around what UDL looks like and how different it is, both within his classroom and classrooms throughout the state. So that might be some way you might want to look.
Excellent. So I think we answered some other questions in the text. So read on. Mary, did you say the money you could use were IDEA?
Yes.
Great. Thank you.
Within your grant system.
Excellent. And then someone was asking, so we currently are in year 3 of a 3-year grant and hoping to extend for 2 more. But if you apply now, you're guaranteed at least 1 year. Other questions? Feel free that I either missed in the chat or that are coming up now. Go ahead and plug them in. I'm good at wait time. I also know it takes learners sometimes a little bit of time to process, so I'm going to keep talking while we're waiting for more questions and just show you a few more resources. So the CAST website is just cast.org, and the UDL guidelines are udlguidelines.cast.org. That's an incredible wealth of information about UDL itself, about the guidelines, about where they came from, the research behind it, what it looks like in practice, all 9 guidelines, and really fleshed out there. We also have a professional publishing wing. So CAST publishes books about UDL, and if you join the network, each member of your team gets a free book. So you can do a book club, or you can all read the same book, or you can create sort of a UDL library at your school. So it's another kind of perk for joining. And so if you want to check out what those options are, it's castpublishing.org. And we also have one of those books available for free online. So another example about what UDL looks like in practice. We have a printed copy you can buy from us or get for free when you join the network, or you can check it out online, and there's videos and links, and it's sort of a live way to learn about UDL. You don't have to have any background in UDL to join the network, so don't feel like you have to go home and study before the test. But if you're interested in reading a little bit more, it's sort of our flagship, mostly heavy on theory about where did UDL come from, what does it look like, what are kind of the underlying tenets. If you want to send that around to try and recruit some folks, feel free to do that. Or they could watch this webinar and see our lovely faces and hear these amazing stories from an actual school really digging in, committing to this work. That's another great way to get folks at your school on board. Other questions? We'll stick around for a little bit if other questions come up. If not, again, I'm just linking to that application website right there, NHUDL application 19-20. And I am the one who is happy to answer any emails anytime. You wake up at 3 a.m. and you really wish that you asked something on the webinar. I'm happy to jump on the phone and answer those questions for you. So please keep those coming as you're working on your applications. I can't thank you enough for being here, Anne and Marianne and Mary. Your insights have been so helpful as we're wrapping our heads around what this looks like in theory and in practice and how it might impact our learners. So thank you so much for taking time to be here. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. It's been our pleasure. And Ari and Melissa and Mary, if any questions emerge after today, feel free to send them our way. We're happy to share whatever we have. Absolutely. We can talk hours about all the benefits of UDL. And
wonderful. You'll likely be very popular at the fall network meeting as people recognize you and want to come up. And
it was so nice to be a part of this today. Thanks for asking us.
Yeah, thank you.
Pleasure. Great. So we'll turn our cameras and volume off, but stay on the chat for a few more minutes if anything else comes up. Stay in touch, and we look forward to learning and designing with you all.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.